So I'm here in Photoshop and I wanted to show a little bit more about levels and curves and how this works. So if you watched the other video, you saw I have my Grand Canyon image and my sunrise image. And if we looked under image adjustments, we were looking at levels and curves and how this works. So I'm going to do this as an example. I'm here on this new project. I'm going to go to this gradient tool and I'm going to add a little gradient. So all this is white all the way down to black values. If I go up to, let me make sure this is put in place. So this is white values all the way down to the black values there. If you looked at the actual color swatch, you can see it's 0 RGB for black, and then the white is 255, 255, 255. So we're going all the way from the darkest value of 0 to the brightest value of 255. I have my little dropper. I can go out here to the white and you'll see it's at 255, 255. If you look at that RGB value, that means it's completely the brightest white value we can have. And then if I go to the bottom right, you'll see it's 0, 0, 0, going all the way to the darkest values. And if I kind of move my eyedropper up, you'll see the values increase from that 0 to 255. I just turned off that little tool there. So if I go up to image, adjustments, let's actually see what levels and curves are doing. So if I go to levels, we'll start there. You can see here's the graph of my values. And because this is a fairly even gradient, the values are pretty level across the whole image. And so this maps out my whole values here. If I look at my values on the left side, that's my dark values down here. If I raise this, whatever I have to the left of this is going to become this pure black color because I have black set to 0. So if we move this up to the right, then anything that's 68 will then become 0. And I can keep on sliding this higher and higher and higher, and you'll see my black value keeps on raising higher up. Now at 119, everything below that becomes 0, so it's completely black. If I raise my output level, you'll see that I can actually make that pure black level a brighter level. Same thing on the reverse. So if I come here to the brightest value at 255, we know that was the pure white up here. I can lower that, and as I lower it, more and more values, you can especially see here in the middle, will become this pure white because it's mapped to 255 here. Then in the center, this is kind of where it gets a little, not literally the gray area, I guess. Here in the center, if I raise this to the right, I'm increasing the amount of values that become darker, and so the image will become darker on those values. If I move this to the left, I'm expanding my area that is bright values, so you're going to see more of those dark values become lighter gray. If I look at it on curves, we kind of have the same thing once again. We have a graph, a histogram of values from our darkest values to our brightest values, and then it maps our output by our input. So right now, all of our input and output values are the same. If the value coming into this was a full 0 value, so completely black, it's being mapped to completely black. If it's completely bright at 255, then it comes out at 255. If it's at 128 or 117, it goes right out at that same value. So to manipulate this, we could raise the input value, and that's going to make everything below this brighter. So it's going to essentially eliminate my black value. If I drag this to the right, it's going to increase my black value, because we've told whatever is value 80 and below is now being mapped to completely zero black. Same thing up here. If I drag from the top point and go downward, anything that's at that brightest point, 255, is now going to be at 193, which is more of a gray value. I can keep on lowering this down. Where curves comes in handy is you have the ability to keep on adding more and more points to manipulate these values. So I could just add one point in the center, and if I drag and make a U, you'll see my area of black values kind of increase here. If I drag this to the other side, you'll see the white values kind of increase down here to the black values. But it's not super harsh. It's pretty even the way it's spreading that across multiple values. But if I wanted to add more points, I could add as many as I want to, and I could add, a crazy pattern if I wanted to. And you'll end up with really interesting dips in the brightness. So what used to be 123 coming in, 121 out, this value, we can move maybe over this way, and we'll move this one here. We'll make this really interesting. And we can add a point here. And so you can see at this particular point, at 153, we've mapped it to a value of 14. So we've taken a pretty bright value, mapped it to a pretty bright value, and so now we end up with a brighter value kind of here. It almost looks like a little pole or something like that, like a cylinder we've taken a photo of. So when you look at that on a real image, we can go here to my Grand Canyon again. If I wanted to make the values maybe a little bit darker in maybe the canyon down here, I could add a point and maybe drag this down a little bit. And just by doing that, I've established more shadows. I've made more of these values darker. I could go to levels and do the same thing. Image, adjustments, levels. If I want the shadows to be a little bit darker, I need to expand the area of darkness, so I'll move this middle point over to the right a little bit. The benefit of curves is I could add in a whole bunch of different points to be able to edit this, and I think it can be a little more precise than using levels, but both levels and curves are both fantastic ways to adjust your color and brightness in your images.